Welcome to SandStorm training sessions. In this session, we'll see dynamic request modification. SandStorm provides three different ways of modifying request parameters at runtime. One is from the UI using the SandStorm request modifier panel. Second one is using JavaScript, and third one would be using Java class files. Let's check these methods one by one. So first of all, let us try to understand why we need to modify the parameters at runtime in the first place. Many a times it happens that certain parameters have dynamic values which are generated as a response of certain request. Such parameters could be the session ID, or say to insert some variety in the test case, like you want to modify the login names and the passwords at runtime. You may have to modify certain request parameters. So all these actions would require some mechanism to manipulate the parameters at runtime. So let's first check how we can handle a parameter like session ID. So select the request in which you want to modify your parameter and go to the parameters tab. Click on the session ID. So you can see a modifier panel getting opened up. Here you select modify value, and then this value can be modified using various criteria. The first one is using a constant. So here you can supply a constant value for your parameter, and this value would be used throughout the test case without any change. You can also select this value from some previous request. In this case, you just have to select the request from the drop down. If this is the first request in which the parameter is occurring, then you would get a blank over here. Otherwise, it will be populated with different requests. So if you want to select it from the response of certain request, then you can select the request from here, and by specifying the start and end delimiters, you can extract the value from the response and use it over here. Now say you want to modify some information for the credit cards. So just select the parameter. Again, select modify value. Now for this particular parameter, what you can do is you can write your own formula for generating the credit card number. And this formula can contain some runtime objects like the virtual username or the iteration count or maybe the max user count. And using various permutation combinations, you can write your own mathematical expressions using the expression builder. You can also select the value for this parameter from flat files, which could be CSV files. In that case, you should already have the list created, and select the file. Here you select the delimiter, and then by either the column number or the column name, you can fetch the values at runtime. One more interesting way of selecting the values for the parameter is using the data wizard. The data wizard establishes a connection with your application database, and then at runtime it fetches the values from the database. So you can select the type of connection you want to create. Further, you can select the database, supply the database name, host, username and password, and then connection would be established. Now what you can do is you can write your SQL query which fetches the value for the parameter from certain tables, and then these values can be used at runtime for modifying these parameters. These values would get stored in files, and then using those files you can modify your parameter. So once you are done with this, you just need to click on OK, and your parameter values would be changed dynamically. Second way of modifying the request parameters is using the JavaScript. So to do so, select the request on which you want to apply the JavaScript and click on Insert JavaScript button. So here you can see a JavaScript editor getting opened up. On the left hand side, there are certain SandStorm objects, and on the right hand side, you have the editor where you can write a JavaScript. This particular utility is used if you want to modify the test case itself along with the request parameters at runtime. Let's see what do we mean by modifying the test case at runtime. Say based on certain activity, you want to get the current loop count of the particular transaction or request. So you can get this using the API. Similarly, you can get the iteration count, and you can get the maximum loop count. And using these values, what you can do is you can set these values back by using the set methods, and this dynamically you can change the values for various loops. Similarly, based on certain responses, you can mark different transactions. For that, certain APIs have been exposed. You can check a transaction name at runtime, and again based on it you can take certain actions. Here you have the request object, and you can apply these APIs on the request object. These APIs, some of these APIs are especially important while we don't know what outcome the execution of test case would bring, and subsequently these changes can be persisted. So similarly, you have the response object. From the response of certain requests, you can take appropriate action. Say you're checking for the response code. So based on that response code, you can further modify the subsequent requests. So let's quickly see a sample JavaScript, how it looks like. So this particular JavaScript is removing certain NTLM headers from the request. This is how the JavaScript would look like. And once you are done with writing your JavaScript, you have to attach the JavaScript. If you want to print the values of certain objects which you are modifying, you can use the utility functions like print logs, and further you can analyze these logs to check your changes. After doing this, you simply have to attach the JavaScript, and it will get attached to the request. Here you can see that. Further, you save your test case and then you execute it. So these were two methods of modifying the request parameters. Third method, which is using dynamic request modifier Java classes, would be covered in a separate session. Should you have any queries on these methods, you can always write back to us. Thank you.